that if you would like to attend the class, the kind of stuff we're sharing with you here, the classes are just chock full of it. We have people oftentimes that will come back to our classes 2 and 3 times because they say, I just learned so much more every time. And, this can be life transformative. So, Pastor, if I can get his attention back there, he's busy. Anyway.
Pastor Jason?
Excuse me. Is there a mechanism whereby these people will be notified of the upcoming class? Is there some kind of sign-up sheet or some mailing or? And that way you won't miss out. So that'll be a good thing. And thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt you. But it's not only diabetes you will reverse, it's all kinds of other diseases. And I want to go into what some of those diseases are because I think this is so very important. So I would like to share with you a series of short stories of people who have been through our program. And they were one of the first things that can be reversed is joint pain. Is there a way you can turn on the screen in the back for me? That would be wonderful because I march around so much I can hardly stay glued to this computer up here. Joint pain. Robert was a pastor of a church. He came to one of our programs to learn how to reverse his diabetes, but his church was doing a remodel project, and they had a lot of their members that were working on it, but he couldn't do a lot of the work because he had such severe joint pain. His joint pain had been bad. It had kept him debilitated for many months, and so he came to our program and began implementing the things that we teach on how you can reverse type 2 diabetes. But joy of joys, his joint pain became less. 4 weeks into the program, he told me, he says, I just can't believe the changes that are happening in my body because now he said, just today, I stood on a ladder all day long painting over my head. He says, I would have never been able to do that before. And so for him, that was a real plus. And then, let's see.
No, back up. We have a whole bunch of stories to tell. There you go.
Okay.
Okay, so Judy came to a seminar and attended just a couple of the lectures. She did get some of the materials, and something came up with her family, and she was not able to complete the seminar. So the next time we held a seminar in that area, which was about 6 months later, this was up in Mont Eagle, Tennessee, she returned. And when she walked in the door, we recognized her, but we were surprised. She was looking so good, and she had lost 75 pounds in the interim between the 2 seminars. So we asked her if she would share her testimony, and she did. And she said, my diabetes is under control. I'm doing great. But the bigger issue for me is that my rheumatoid arthritis, the pain from my rheumatoid arthritis, the pain is almost gone. It is so much less. I wish I had known this. I would have done this 10 years ago if I had just known.
Rachel came to the very first seminar that we held, and she was a very quiet individual, sat right down on my right and with her husband and didn't talk. But she came. She implemented what we talked about, most of it. When we did a follow-up meeting 3 months after the class, she returned and handed us a letter. She said, I don't talk, but I wanted you to know my story. This woman, for the previous 2 years, had not left her house except for 2 reasons: to get food and to go to doctor's appointments. That was because she had such bad neuropathy pain. She just simply wouldn't go out the door. And she said as the weight began to fall off, you see, when you implement these things we're going to be talking about, people will spontaneously lose weight. And she said as the weight began to come off, so did her pain begin to go away. And so her neuropathy completely resolved. Karen called her 2 years after the class, and she was very busy. She had resumed taking care of her chickens and gardening. She would spend a lot of time in her yard and outdoors in the garden, and but she couldn't talk long because she had broccoli on the stove and was cooking it. So anyway.
And I just love that because broccoli's so good. But when you nourish your cells, the body will heal itself, and that is what had happened with her. But the other thing, when we were reading this letter, we stopped and we looked at each other. Now, this was the very first seminar. We were teaching people how to reverse diabetes, but here her neuropathy pain had gone away. We had been taught all our lives as nurses that once you have neuropathy pain, you're going to have it, or you lose the feeling in your feet. It's gone. And so we stopped and we looked at each other and we said,
that's not supposed to happen.
It was shocking to us. So now we have a lot of other stories of people that have done the same. Irritable bowel.
I want to tell you about Pam. Pam had had irritable bowel syndrome for quite some time, and she came to the program. And one of the biggest things that she told us toward the end of the program, she says, I'm just so amazed because my irritable bowel syndrome is under the best control that it has been ever since I started your program. Pretty big endorsement.
Lee was another gentleman that came. We did a 2-day program called Diabetes in a Nutshell over in a community. Diabetes Reversal in a Nutshell. And he came to that program. He had been diagnosed with diabetes for a while, and his physician was wanting to put him on insulin. He said, no, please don't. Let me go to this program. Well, when he came for those 2 days, he found out that an hour away in another community, we were holding a full seminar. And so he got a friend to bring him over there to the seminar, and what happened?
Well, he started doing everything that we told him to do, except he struggled with some things. For instance, he had real bad dentition. His teeth were really bad. And he says, I can't eat salads. Well, I said, you need the fiber, you need the nutrition that comes in the green leafy vegetables. Do you have a blender? Yes. I said, what's wrong with making a smoothie? So he would blend his salad up and eat his salad that way. Anyway, he found a way to do the things that we were talking about. He had a non-healing fracture in his leg. He was on disability because he had broken his leg below the knee and both bones, and it had not healed for several years. And so he was living with this disability. He had to keep it in a brace in order to be able to get around. And
he was on blood pressure medication. He
yes.
talked to his physician, told her what he was doing,
she said, just go to the class. You can do it, but it won't work. And so
keep taking your medicine, she said.
One of the things in the class we told them to do was we told them you need to be sure and monitor your blood sugars, but also monitor your blood pressures. If your blood pressures begin trending down and you're on blood pressure medications, it's one of the first things that we see reverse. We had learned this by this time. And so we said, monitor your blood pressure. So he did both, and he wrote those numbers down on his calendar. He began to notice that his blood pressure was in the low hundreds. So he gave his doctor a call. Says, don't you think we ought to be starting to cut back on my blood pressure medicine? She says, absolutely not. You take your blood pressure medicine just like I prescribed it. So he did. 2 weeks later, he got up off the couch and passed out, fell on the floor. Fortunately, no serious injuries, just a few bruises. His wife went and ran and got the blood pressure monitor, checked his blood pressure. It was 82/40. He said, well, I'm not taking any more of that blood pressure medicine until I see my doctor. So he went into the doctor's office. His soonest appointment that he could get was in a week. So in the meantime, he took no blood pressure medicines, but he took his calendar with him, showed it to the doctor, and she says, "And how long has it been since you've had your blood pressure medicine?" He said, "It's been a week now." She said, "Well, don't start back now." She took him off all of his medicines except one multivitamin. He told me, he said, "It feels so weird." Well, I like that kind of weird, you know?
So Dee had worked in food service for many years, and she enjoyed her food. She's a wonderful cook. And we were surprised when we saw her because she had put on a lot of weight. This is a lady that we knew. And she had put on a lot of weight. She had quite a large adipose apron. And we really felt sorry for her. But she came to the class, she learned, she started implementing, and slowly the pounds came off. In 2 years, she lost 140 pounds, and she's so happy.
And she's different than the other story we told you about this morning.
Yes, yes, yes.
So we have quite a few people that are in the 100-plus club. I want to tell you about Clyde. Clyde came as one of the volunteers who was going to help us put on a diabetes reversal program that we did, and we were doing diabetes screening just like what they did here with the A1Cs. So they came in, and he decided, well, I might as well go ahead and have my A1C checked. He did. He was pre-diabetic. It shocked him. He had just been to the doctor a week or two before and had a carotid ultrasound done, and he had 75% blockages in his carotid arteries. That means he had bad rip-roaring cardiovascular disease, and they wanted him to come back in 6 months, and they were going to repeat the ultrasound to see if it had worsened. Maybe they would have to do surgery to get rid of the plaque buildups in his arteries. So, and it puts him at high risk for stroke when he's in that situation. But when he learned that he had prediabetes, it's just like he felt his whole body was falling apart. He had just retired, and now he had cardiovascular disease, and now was pre-diabetic, and it just was the motivation he needed to do something. So he came not just as a volunteer for our program, but he came as a participant now to learn how to reverse his pre-diabetes numbers and see if he could bring this under control. And so he worked hard at it. 6 months later, he volunteered to help us again. But this time, when he came in to our first meeting, he brought in a stack of medical records. It was about 3/4 of an inch high, because he wanted to prove to me what he was saying. He had gone back. He had had the repeat ultrasound after implementing the program for a year. And to be all really fair, he took it just a step further. He would not eat any food that had more than half a gram of saturated fat per serving. It was just off the table. So anyway, but he came back in and showed me where he had had his repeat ultrasound done. His carotid arteries were completely clear. No cholesterol buildups. When that happens to the carotid arteries, what do you think happens to the arteries that go to the kidneys? What happens to the arteries that go to the heart? What happens to the arteries that go to other important organs of the body? Absolutely right. It cleared them up. So in 6 months, he had reversed his cardiovascular disease by following these principles.
And the last story we're going to share here is about a lady who, she had diabetes. She had given up her car, given up her driver's license because she couldn't see well enough to drive anymore. So she had a friend that brought her to the seminar. And as she went through the seminar, she started implementing these things, and she started feeling better, and she went back and she had her eyes checked, and her eyesight had improved enough. She went back and got her driver's license back. She passed the test, and her church bought her a car so that she could be independent again. And that was just an awesome, incredible praise for her. So knowledge brings hope. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Those who have consistently applied these principles live 12 and a half years longer than the general population. So we're going to talk about something, it's called your microbiome.
Whoops. Okay. So the microbiome,
That's the
when
gut.
we talk about that, we're talking about bacteria that live in your bowel. And scientists tell us that there are about 39 billion, no, trillion, 39 trillion bacteria. That's about 4 or 5 trillion more bacteria than you even have cells in your body. And these things live down there, and they're impacting our health in ways we never had dreamed possible before. But in recent years, we are learning about them. In fact, we have learned that there are as many as 36,000 species of bacteria, different kinds of bacteria that grow in our bowels. And we really only know a little more than 100, about 120 of them, we have some pretty good knowledge about. But the other varieties we don't know about. It's going to take us years of science to figure out what kind of impact, if any, they have. Now, right now, scientists think that most of those probably have a pretty neutral impact on our bowel. But there is a symbiotic relationship that exists between many of these bacteria and us. Now, some of the bacteria are bad bacteria. And the bad bacteria are ones that cause us to be sick, or they cause an imbalance of in our immune system. See, 70% of your immune system is housed in the bowel. So there's a really close relationship of what happens to the bacteria and what happens to our immune system, whether we get well or whether we stay sick. So when these things get out of harmony, it causes something that we call gut dysbiosis. Now, just most of the bacteria they think are neutral. There are a small number of bacteria that are very beneficial to us. And if we can increase the number of the beneficial and decrease the number of the bad, then that puts us in a good situation. The problem is we eat the standard American lifestyle. And the standard American lifestyle, I think we went too far, didn't we?
No, that's the next.
Okay. Anyway, the standard American lifestyle is a lifestyle that has changed a lot in the last few years. Think of the way great-grandmother ate, and think of the way grandmother ate. Did they go hungry? Most of them didn't. Did you enjoy the foods they put on the table? Yes, most of us did. And so we're not talking about eating bad, we're just talking about eating differently. We live in a society where everything is fast. You know, we have fast food. But when we go to the grocery store, do we shop predominantly in the produce section, or do we go up and down the aisles for most of what we need? If you go up and down the aisles, you're probably eating processed foods. And those foods typically are high in fat, they're high in food additives, they're high in other things which actually cause bad bacteria to grow. And they cause this condition that's called gut dysbiosis. So in this slide, I know the printing is a little small, but it has a list of symptoms that are associated with damage to the gut microbiota. And that's what we call dysbiosis. These are symptoms. If you're experiencing these kind of symptoms, it may be that you have an imbalance in in the gut of your bowel. Things like abdominal cramping, gas, or bloating, food allergies or food sensitivities. I've had a problem with this kind of stuff all my life. When I was a baby, I did not breastfeed, and what they were feeding me, I was allergic to. Skim milk and orange juice and something else. Eggs, yes. So as an infant, that's what I was eating from the word get-go, and I was very allergic to them. At 9 months, I'd only gained 4 pounds. I had grown in length, but I had become very skinny and emaciated, and my parents thought they were going to lose me. They finally found a doctor that was able to identify the allergies, but because of that experience, I have known for years that I have gut dysbiosis. And so for me, good health is something I struggle to reach. But since I started eating this plan, high fiber foods, my health has improved so much. used to have terrible migraine headaches, be hugging the toilet 5 times a week, probably on average. Nausea, vomiting, and whatever else. I just was miserable all the time. But it's all changed so much since I started changing and eating these high-nutrient, high-fiber foods. Anyway, mucus in the stool, constipation, diarrhea, indigestion. You see heartburn and belching and weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, difficulty concentrating. All of those and more, they're all symptoms of gut dysbiosis. So then if we look at
The next one.
immune-mediated diseases.
So what's mediated? What does that mean?
Okay, to mediate in this sense, physiologically, it means to bring about. So this, when it says immune-mediated conditions associated with gut dysbiosis, what we're talking about is we're talking about a reaction of the immune system that is prompted by bad bacteria down here in the gut. Okay? So these disorders, type 1 diabetes. We've known for years that type 1 diabetes was a disease that was triggered usually by some kind of immune response. It's an autoimmune disease, but all of these other diseases as well, things like celiac disease and multiple sclerosis, food allergies, seasonal allergies, psoriasis, chronic fatigue syndrome, restless leg syndrome. These things, when you have them, you know you got them. A lot of people don't even know what they are because they don't have them. Things like Guillain-Barré syndrome or Behçet's disease or Kawasaki disease. You know about those if you've got them, but typically not unless. So
that was immune related. Now we have metabolic conditions.
Obesity, caused because of gut dysbiosis. Do you know they have done studies where they have taken people and the only thing they have changed was the bacterial flora in the intestine, and whereas they were obese, they have been able to spontaneously begin to lose weight, and they will lose down to a normal body size just by changing the gut microbiome. So, coronary artery disease. Hello! We talked about people with type 2 diabetes. 80% of them have coronary artery disease. It's being caused because of a metabolic condition that's associated with dysbiosis. Bacteria in your gut, gout, cirrhosis of various types in the liver, acute pancreatitis or chronic pancreatitis. If you're suffering from those kind of things, we have a lady that attends our church. She's out all the time because she has chronic pancreatitis. The answer is something we're going to talk about in just a moment. Let's look at endocrine disorders, things like endometriosis or polycystic ovarian syndrome, female infertility, sexual problems, breast cancer, endometrial cancer, prostate cancer, even erectile dysfunction can all be related to these things. And then we have neuropsychiatric disorders. Our brain is connected with our bowels some way. There's this intricate type relationship. If the bacteria down there decide they want to eat something, they send a chemical message to the brain. The brain interprets that chemical message as, the bacteria down here wants a cheeseburger. Well, it's not going to be satisfied until you do a cheeseburger. It gives you the food craving, and the brain will interpret that. But it expresses itself in many other ways as well. These bacteria cause things like Alzheimer's disease, schizophrenia, ADHD. We've only learned this in the last 10 years or so. Chronic fatigue syndrome, restless leg syndrome, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, etc., fibromyalgia. So there is a common answer to those. And the solution?
What do we need to do?
Well, first of all, we have to understand that bacteria are very finicky eaters. if they don't get what they want to eat, they would rather languish and die than eat something they don't want to eat. And if you're experiencing food cravings, it may be because the bacteria are asking for that food. And if you hold on for just a little bit and power your way through it, say, we're going to do brain over bacteria, oftentimes those cravings will go away because within just 2 or 3 days, you're going to lose that big family of bacteria as bowels move, and you're going to be feeding other bacteria that want to grow off what you're feeding them. So the question is, what do the bad bacteria want to eat that we should not be eating if we want them to die off? And what do the good bacteria need to eat in order to solve the problem? You want to know the answer? Okay. The answer is too simple. You're going to hate me for this. It's fiber. Lowly fiber. Where do you get fiber in your food? Okay, beans, vegetables, yes. Yes. In fact, all plant-based foods contain it. Okay, so you've got to gravitate to plant-based foods. And that's the answer. And the more variety of fiber that you get, the better it's going to feed the good bacteria. So what the experts are telling us, these are world-renowned gastroenterologists are telling us, if you want to reverse type 2 diabetes, if you want to reverse a lot of the host of these other diseases, what you've got to do is you have to eat at least 30 varieties of fiber every week. 30. It's that many.
That way you're getting different bacteria that's coming, different food that's feeding that bacteria.
And you see, this is one of the things that happens when you eat those bacteria. You can't digest them.
Eat the bacteria?
I mean, no, excuse me, when you eat the fiber. When you eat the fiber, you can't digest fiber. But the fiber is associated with high levels of nutrients in your food. Now, if you make an abrupt change, you may feel bad of the first few days that you do it because your body may not be used to eating high nutrient foods. I usually tell people, start and gradually increase it. We showed some of the individuals how to tell how much fiber is in your food. You just say, hey Siri, how much fiber in a medium apple? Or how much fiber in one medium baked potato? Or whatever. You just ask the question and Siri fires you back the answer. It'll say 2.3 grams in a medium apple, or it'll say however much in a potato, or whatever it may be. And so you can keep track of the total of your fiber grams for the course of the day. And at first, 20 to 25 grams of fiber. Women start out with 20 grams of fiber a week. Men start out with 25. Men eat more than women. That's why the difference. Okay? But that sort of establishes the ratio. Then next week you go to 30 to 35, the next week 40 to 45, the next week 50 grams or more, and you stay at 50 grams or more of fiber for the rest of your life. If you already eat a lot of plants in your food, you don't have to do it over 4 weeks. You might be able to do it over 2. Go 30 to 35. If you start experiencing bloating, gas, that kind of thing, you're probably eating too much fiber, so back off about 5 or 10 grams of fiber a day, but just try to keep it fairly constant as you're going up. The reason for the constant is if you're not used to eating that much fiber, what happens is you'll have this gas and bloating. It's caused because the bacteria that go into your bowel are sitting there and they're fermenting and creating all this. But when you begin to change the microbiome, as the bacteria begin to proliferate that like to eat the fiber, then they will be eating the fiber and the fiber won't be sitting there forming the gas anymore, and you will be comfortable. I've had people saying, I didn't believe it would work. I never eat beans because beans give me so much gas. But if you're consistently eating the same amount, it's not going to give you much gas once you get used to it and start growing the good bacteria. So that's why the adjustment period of time. So when I tell people to make changes in their diet, the first thing I want to do is not take something away. I want to give you something. So what I'm giving you right now to begin reversing your disease is I'm giving you fiber. And that means more plants. The centenarians, the people that live 100 years or older, are typically people who eat a diet that is almost totally plant-based. Usually 90% or more of their diet is made up of plants. And when they eat the meats come in form more like of a garnish or something for a real special occasion or whatever. But typically they don't eat that much. And lots and lots of plants. And the diseases will begin to go away. So the other thing is the fiber, the way that nature produces it, there's a lot of nutrients that are attached to the fiber. And one of the things that we've found over time is if you feed your body a high nutrient diet, it has the materials that it needs in order to rebuild itself. You know, there's some very tough diseases. Take, for instance, something like lupus. Lupus is an autoimmune disorder, can make people just feel terrible, and it will make them sterile. They can't have kids. They will have exacerbations that'll put them in the hospital over and over again. And Dr. Brooke Goldner is one of the leaders in this field, and she happened to be in medical school when she came down with lupus. And she thought she'd never be able to have children again. She tried everything in the book, was hospitalized numerous times, nothing was working. Somebody came to her and suggested that she try the high fiber approach. The high fiber, high nutrient approach. And she did. Her lupus went into remission and has stayed in remission because she has stayed on this diet. It's so wonderful for her. And she has healthy children. She actually runs an online medical practice helping people all over the world who suffer from autoimmune disorders, helping them, you know, whether it be type 1 diabetes or whether it be any other autoimmune disorders. She helps these people with those disorders, and they are able to come off of it. One thing she recommends is something we call a green smoothie. She calls it hypernutrition. She says greens are absolutely loaded with nutrition and fiber. So you go down and you get a whole bunch of greens, you know, something like maybe the spring mix that you can buy at Walmart. Get an organic spring mix. Take your blender and pack it full 3/4 of the way up with those greens. Then you add in about a half a cup of flaxseed, or maybe chia seed,
or
walnuts. Those foods are very high in omega-3s, and the omega-3 fatty acids are really important for building cell walls and structure. And so you're trying to give to your cells the things that your cells will need to rebuild. So now you're giving the fatty acids for the cell wall as well as the high nutrient levels from all those green leafies, and that's going to help your cells heal itself. So she packs the greens in, puts the half cup of seeds or walnuts in there, and then she adds seasonal fruits. Things like whatever's in season: mango, pineapple, apples, oranges, peaches, nectarines, etc. She just fills it full of those other kind of things, turns the blender on. No, excuse me. She adds water then. Adds pure water till the water rises to the level of the top of the greens. She stops there. Then she puts the lid on. Yeah,
he forgot to do that
I forgot to one time. I had green stuff all over the kitchen. From the ceiling to the floor. And the cabinets and the countertops. It was a nasty cleanup mess. Anyway, so put the lid on and then punch the on button. And, you know, in 20 seconds, you will have a delicious tasting smoothie. And you drink a pitcher full of that every day. And she recommends doing it every day for 21 days. And what will happen, it will mitigate oxidative stress. People with diabetes get all kinds of complications on their internal organs, you know. kidney failure and cardiovascular disease and all that kind of stuff that goes along with it. All of that stuff, most of it is caused because of a disorder we call oxidative stress. It's where lots of free radicals are just flooding your body. We'll talk about that more later on, I think. But anyway, but this will mitigate the oxidative stress. So you want to feed the good bacteria. And when you feed the good bacteria the stuff that they want to eat, they will begin growing.
And the next picture here is the stuff that a lot of the bad want to feed on. So we're not going to linger on it long.
Oh, yeah. I got the controller right here.
Yeah, here's what we want to starve them from having this. So we will move on from that, and let's go to the next one.
So the answer is fiber, and which we only get from plants, 50 grams or more a day, and eat a variety of plants so that you're getting at least 30 different varieties of plants in the course of the week. So I did an evaluation, and the first week I did this, I got 31 varieties.
I made a list, and we put it on the table. I put a pad, and I started writing. When we would have a salad, I would list the things, and I made a mental note. I've got to have more broccoli, and I need some peas on here, and and it helped us so that the next week we were able to make the list as well.
Now, Dr. Will Bolsowitz has helped a lot of people reverse these chronic kind of diseases, including type 2 diabetes. And he says, all you have to do to reverse type 2 diabetes is plants. 30 varieties of plants a week, period. Done. Over. That's it. That's all you have to do. I don't know that I'm there yet, because other studies I've read indicate that people that, if they adopt, a plant-based diet like that, certainly the more of those that you do, the better, but typically people will bring their diabetes down to a certain level and they'll plateau there. And so we've learned that there's another component or 2 or 3 or 4 that if you add there, they will push you over the edge to the complete reversal situation. And that's where we all would like to end up at. So I encourage you, don't stop with just one. We want lots of them. Now, I want to tell you about John.
You have time. You have about 4 minutes.
This gentleman, he had a friend that called me up and told me about him and said, would you be willing to talk to John? Well, typically, I don't cold call people. Their friend says, well, you need to talk to this one or that one. I did it 2 or 3 times, and that was enough to teach me. People that don't want to tell me about their diseases don't want to talk to me, especially if I'm a total stranger and I call up wanting to talk. I mean, that's like these spam calls you get, I'm so-and-so from Medicare, and are you still having back pain? Well, I don't have back pain, but I'm not going to tell you I don't have back pain, anyway.
He tells them he won't talk to him.
I tell the people that call me and say, will you talk to so-and-so? Yes, I'll be happy to talk to them. Here's my number. If they're interested in talking to me, have them call me. And that's the way you'll get to talk to me. So John called me. He had been having diabetes for a number of years. It seems to me it was 11 years or something like that. But he'd sort of gotten to a tipping point just a few months before where his blood sugars were just spiraling out of control. He was going to see his doctor frequently, and his doctor was increasing the medications, and nothing was working. His blood sugars were running, instead of 70 to 100 range where they should be for normal, his blood sugars were running oftentimes 450 to 500. And he just could not get them down. So I listened to him tell his story, and then told him, I said, well, John, if you want to change if you want to reverse your diabetes, we're going to have to talk about your food. That's okay. I'll do anything, he says. All right. And so I began telling him how he needed to increase the fiber in his foods. He gave the, you got to be kidding me, kind of response to me. And for 3 days or so, he did nothing. But then the more he thought about it, the more he thought, well, I might as well give it a try. So he got on the bandwagon, decided he would do it. We had set up a follow-up appointment for 2 weeks out. He called me before the follow-up appointment. He was so excited. He said, I have been doing this just a few days, and my blood sugar is down to 180. I haven't seen numbers like that in more than 6 months. And so I used the opportunity to tell him, okay, well, let's take it to the next level. If you want to increase your, if you want to decrease your blood sugar even more, decrease the amount of fat in your foods. Lay off fried foods and oils and things like that. And so when we had our next follow-up call, blood sugars were running down around 120. This is in less than 2 weeks, folks. Well, between 2 and 3 weeks anyway. He was down to that level. And so I explained to him how to increase his fiber gradually. And anyway, the results were the results were amazing. One of the things I usually tell people, though, is when you start adding fiber to the diet, be sure that you add plenty of water to the diet. Now, water is one of the interventions that's going to help you reverse diabetes. But on the flip side, when people go to adding high fiber in their diet, there's a small percentage of the population, less than 10%, that may experience constipation. And it can be pretty intense. And that usually happens because they're not drinking enough water. If they drink plenty of water when they're adding high fiber to their diet, usually they have no problem. If you would still have a problem, then I recommend to people that they either take an over-the-counter laxative before they get in bad trouble, or they see their doctor and see what he has to give them. But anyway, that usually will take care of the problem. So that's not the case. Well, I think I have expended my time.
No, you're right on time. We do want to give time for questions and answers. So does anyone have any questions about what you've heard? Oh, some hands shooting up. Well, I'm going to run in the back, and I saw this hand in the back first.
If you eat your plant food through a smoothie versus eating it as whole food, do you effectively get the same amount of fiber?
That is correct. She says if you eat your foods as a smoothie instead of whole foods, you're still getting the same amount of fiber. That's correct. Here's the only downside caveat I see of that, and that is one of the things that gives us satiety is chewing. It takes about 20 minutes of eating a meal to feel satisfied. Now, you can put down a lot of calories really fast when it comes to a smoothie. I'm not against smoothies, but I just want to add a word of caution. You need saliva to mix with your smoothie. You need to eat it slowly. You need to like pretend you're chewing it kind of thing, to mix all that good stuff together. And that is going to give you the optimal way to take that. But that being said, I have nothing against smoothies. I don't speak highly of juicing, because I think the only way persons should do juicing is if they're doing it under a therapist that's trained in that modality. Otherwise, I know people like, for instance, they go to Europe and they learn ways to get their cancer in remission. They come back here and decide, well, I'm going to juice, and so they start juicing all kinds of sweet vegetables, but the cancers feed off vegetables, and very quickly they go from, cancers feed off of sugar. So very quickly they can go from in remission to rip-roaring disease, and it'll soon take them out of here. So, that's not a good way to do it, but a good balanced way is the whole food. The whole food, yes. Okay, we had a question down here, and there's one over there.
Okay, sticking with the smoothie, a half a cup of chia seeds, flax seeds, or walnuts, isn't that high in fat?
Well, yes, it does have a certain amount of fat in it, but here's the difference. The fat the oils that you have in those foods, if it's extracted, is industrially prepared. And when you're eating them in the natural form, you're mixing them with the nutrients that need to be there in order to metabolize them. You also have the fiber that's there to slow the absorption of those foods and of those fats. And so it is going to be tolerated differently in your diet. You can still overdo it, but when we're talking hypernutrition, you're increasing the whole nutrition level by all the green leafies. And so I don't think it's a real big problem there. Dr. Goldner gets amazing results when that happens. On the flip side, let's talk about the oils. If you're eating the high industrially prepared oils, we're talking, you take the walnuts to a factory and you make walnut oil. This is the way they make the oil. They'll take the walnuts, they grind them up, and then they pour in hexane. It's a petroleum distillate that is very much like gasoline. They pour it in there, and the hexane dissolves all the fat. And they can then separate the fiber to the bottom, pour off the hexane, and the fat goes with it. Then they will evaporate the hexane, which leaves the crude oil from the walnut. Now it's black, it's tarry, it tastes nasty, and it smells awful. So they have to refine it. So in order to refine it, they heat it up to about 1200 degrees, which is above the flash point of the oil. That burns off the impurities that are in the oil. Then they deodorize it and filter it and serve it to you. But in the process of heating it so hot, they have made it into a free radical. It is a dangerous chemical now that actually promotes inflammation, and it will make your diabetes worse. So, this goes for multiple oils: soy oil, corn oil, safflower oil, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The only oils that I would recommend would be cold-pressed oils, like a cold-pressed olive oil. Now, some people talk about the corruption that goes on in the world. Sometimes people will put an industrially prepared oil in the bottle and call it cold-pressed. So the best way to eat the oil is in the olive. Eat the whole food. Eat the whole food fats. That's the Cadillac of the food. But then if we have to substitute, I'm next going to move down what I call a fats continuum, and I'll do the monounsaturated oils, things like olive oil, safflower oil, flaxseed oil. Those usually are kept in the refrigerator, like flaxseed oil is kept in the refrigerated section, not in not on the grocery store shelf, because it'll go rancid at room temperature. So if you want something that's wholesome for you, those are the oils that you would eat. However, you can't fry with those. If you're going to fry with them, you got to go with a polyunsaturated oil, and I don't recommend frying, but anyway, that's what you need to use for frying. And then saturated oils and hydrogenated vegetable oils, they should be at the total bottom of the list. When you eat those oils, it causes death to the beta cells in the pancreas. Makes your diabetes worse. So diabetes is not a sugar problem, folks. Diabetes is really a fat problem. It's because we're consuming too much fat, and if you lay the fats aside and you eat the whole plant-based food, that will nourish your body. It corrects your microbiome. It actually causes these bacteria to, when the bacteria eat the fiber, they break the fiber down into something that are called short-chain fatty acids. And the name of one of those, one of the most important ones, is one called butyrate. Now, butyrate goes throughout your body. It undoes type 2 diabetes. And so the more butyrate you can get in the body, the better you are. And the way you get more butyrate is you eat the high variety of fibers. But there's another dimension to the butyrate as well. You see in your colon is lined with a single cell thickness of a lining. They're called your colonocytes. And they're very protective about what they allow to pass through, and be absorbed into the intestine, etc. But when you get gut dysbiosis causes the connective tissue between these things to weaken, and it separates, and it allows small bits of stool and other things that are there with it, even bacteria, to get into your bloodstream, and that's very highly inflammatory. And so we want to try to prevent that from happening. Well, 70% of the food that these colonocytes eat, this lining of the of the large intestine, 70% of what they want to eat is butyrate, made from the fiber by bacteria. And if you will give them a high diet of that, then those connections between the cells tighten back up, and your leaky gut goes away. So you'll hear some of these guys online, never eat blueberries, never eat beans. It's all these kind of things. It's hype, guys. It's hype. What you want is you want to eat blueberries. You want to eat beans. You want to eat all these different plant-based foods because you're getting the variety of fiber, and that causes the leaky gut to heal. And instead of worrying about lectins, which make the leak into the body through the leaky gut, now you're having health. Okay, there's another question up here. And
We
one
have
here.
time for one more question.
Okay, right here.
He's bringing a mic. He's bringing a mic. Hang on there.
All right, I'm taking Metamucil.
Okay.
Is that good to take if it's a high fiber? It says that it'll help your fiber.
Yes, it is high fiber. Here's the thing. It's one variety of fiber.
Oh,
Okay? So you can count that for one. And some people say, well, you say we're supposed to eat 50 grams of fiber a day. Can I just have Metamucil or FiberCon or something like that? One packet of Metamucil contains between 2 and 4 grams of fiber. So you're good for that much. FiberCon tablets, 1 gram of fiber per tablet. And so, if you're taking the fiber in that way,
If you're
I'm
eating
taking it in a-
15,
yeah. So that counts for 1 serving.
Oh.
That's all I'll give you out of it, just 1 serving. So you still have 29 servings to go.
Whoa. All right. There's
Okay.
so much I don't know.
Okay, and I'll take your question after we're done, because he wants us to end up this segment. So.
I also want to give the Wickhams a little bit of a break. So our next presentation is at 2 p.m. It's the last one for the day. There's still food if you're interested in eating. I am thrilled to report that based upon what I'm seeing today, we will not only meet but exceed the goals for the blood donations. I've got some people who I know I've seen. You've been there today. If you donated today, would you mind standing? I'm going to embarrass you. If you donated today, let's thank these heroes. Let's thank. We got four donors in the room so far. Thank you for donating. They will still be here if there are people who are wanting to give. So even though they're supposed to wrap up at 3, if you get there before 3 and so forth, they may extend a little bit extra time. Hopefully you've accepted the challenges we gave you on the other side of the card, and be sure before you leave, you turn those in at the lobby. So if you've done 7 of the 10 things, you qualify for that drawing. And if you haven't done all the challenges, still leave your name, your contact info, turn that in, and we will inform you about the 8-week diabetes reversal seminar when we have a solid date for that. Okay. So I guess if you want to approach the Wickhams, as long as they have the stamina and energy, that you can get your questions answered now. But we do want to give them a little bit of a break before the 2 o'clock presentation.
Did you
Thank
get the
you.
next